You said forever. I believed you. That was my mistake.
The champagne tasted like spite, and the caviar looked like tiny black lies scattered across silver platters. I stood in the corner of Craig DeWitt's penthouse, nursing my third glass of overpriced bubbles and watching Seattle's elite pretend they belonged in the same room as my daughter Julia. My name is Rick Lawson, and I used to be somebody. 20 years on the force, detective shield, commendations gathering dust in a storage unit somewhere. Now I'm a private investigator with a cramped office in Pioneer Square and a bank account that laughs at me every time I check it. Tonight, I'm the unwanted guest at my own daughter's engagement party. "Dad, you made it!" Julia appeared beside me like an angel in white silk, her smile bright enough to power the Space Needle. At 22, she had her mother's beauty, but thankfully none of Melissa's calculating coldness. "Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart." I kissed her forehead, inhaling her familiar vanilla perfume. "Where's the lucky guy?" "Brandon's talking business with Craig. You know how it is." She gestured toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, where my ex-wife's third husband held court with a group of suits. Brandon Chen, Julia's fiancé, stood slightly apart from the circle, looking uncomfortable. I knew exactly how it was. Craig DeWitt had made his fortune as an investment advisor, which in my experience usually meant separating rich people from their money through creative accounting and charm. He'd married my ex-wife Melissa 2 years ago, and she'd transformed from a bitter divorce attorney into Seattle's social butterfly overnight. "Rick." The voice behind me could freeze vodka. I turned to face Melissa, resplendent in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "I'm surprised you came. It's my daughter's engagement party, Mel. Wild horses couldn't keep me away." Her laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Your daughter? You mean the daughter you see twice a month for awkward dinners? The one whose college tuition Craig paid because you were too proud to ask for help?" Julia's face flushed. "Mom, please don't." "It's fine, honey." I kept my voice level, but my grip tightened on the champagne flute. "Your mother's just reminding me of my place in the food chain." "Which is nowhere near the top," Craig's voice boomed as he approached with his entourage. At 38, he was younger than me, but carried himself like he owned the world. Maybe he did. "Rick, isn't it, the private eye?" "Detective Lawson." I extended my hand, which he shook with the enthusiasm of someone handling garbage. Right. Julia's told me so much about you." His smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Must be tough, working those insurance fraud cases while the real action passes you by." Behind him, I noticed his muscle. A thick-necked gorilla named Vince who'd been eyeing me since I arrived. Next to Vince stood Tara, Craig's so-called assistant, a blonde bombshell whose job description apparently included wearing dresses 2 sizes too small. "I managed to keep busy," I replied. "Amazing how much dirt you can dig up when people think you're nobody." Craig's smile faltered for just a second. "Well, enjoy the party. Try not to embarrass Julia too much with your stories." As he walked away, I caught a fragment of conversation between Tara and Vince. He told me removing the last obstacle would be easy money. Trust fund clears next month. My detective instincts, rusty but not dead, started tingling. I excused myself from Julia and moved closer to the group, pretending to admire the view of Elliott Bay. "Brandon's getting cold feet," Vince muttered to Craig. "Kid's asking too many questions about the prenup." "Let me handle Brandon," Craig replied smoothly. "Once the papers are signed, it won't matter what he thinks." I felt my blood pressure spike. Whatever Craig was planning, it involved my daughter's trust fund, the money her grandfather had left her, locked away until she married or turned 25, money that would make her very attractive to the wrong kind of man. I watched as Craig pulled Brandon aside for a private conversation. The young man's face went from confused to angry to resigned in the span of 5 minutes. When they returned to the group, Brandon looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Dad, is everything okay?" Julia appeared at my elbow, concern creasing her perfect features. "Everything's fine, sweetheart, just admiring Craig's hospitality." But everything wasn't fine. As the evening wore on, I noticed more troubling details. The way Craig's hand lingered on Julia's shoulder, the calculating looks Melissa shot at her own daughter, the nervous energy radiating from Brandon like heat from a fever. When I tried to pull Julia aside for a private word, Craig materialized between us like a well-dressed wall. "Sorry, Rick, but Julia's needed for photos. Family only." His emphasis on family hit like a slap. "I am family," I said quietly. "Are you?" Craig stepped closer, and I smelled expensive cologne mixed with something darker. Because from where I stand, you're just the guy who couldn't keep his marriage together and can't afford to take care of his own daughter. Julia's moved on, Detective. Maybe you should too. The champagne glass in my hand trembled slightly. Around us, the party continued its glittering charade, but I felt like I was standing in a spotlight with a target painted on my chest. This isn't over, I said. Actually, it is. Craig's smile was pure poison. Security will show you out. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Vince appeared at my shoulder like a bad omen. I could fight. 20 years of police work had taught me how to handle myself. But not here. Not in front of Julia. Not with 50 witnesses recording everything on their phones. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out my cell phone. I dialed a number I knew by heart. Duval, it's Rick Lawson. Remember that favor you owe me? I'm calling it in. I kept my eyes locked on Craig's face as I spoke. I need you to run a background check on Craig DeWitt, investment advisor, married to Melissa Lawson DeWitt. Yeah, tonight. And Duval, dig deep. I ended the call and smiled at Craig's suddenly pale face. You're right, I told him. This is for the best. Give Julia my love. As I walked toward the elevator, I heard the first sounds of chaos erupting behind me. Brandon's voice raised in anger. Julia's confused protests. Melissa's sharp commands for everyone to calm down. The elevator doors closed on the wreckage of what should have been a celebration, and I felt something cold and determined settle in my chest. Craig DeWitt had made a mistake tonight. He'd threatened my daughter, and in doing so, he'd reminded me exactly who I used to be. The hunter was back in the game. My office in Pioneer Square looked even more pathetic than usual in the gray Seattle morning light. Rain streaked the windows, and the radiator clanged like a prisoner trying to escape. I sat behind my second-hand desk, nursing black coffee and waiting for my phone to ring. Chloe Martinez, my partner and the only reason our two-person PI firm stayed afloat, looked up from her computer. You look like heck, Rick. Rough night at the society party? You could say that. I filled her in on Craig's threats and the fragments of conversation I'd overheard. Chloe listened without interruption, her dark eyes growing more concerned with each detail. So, you think this Craig guy is running some kind of marriage scam on your daughter? I think Craig DeWitt is exactly the kind of predator I used to put behind bars, and now he's got his claws in Julia. My phone buzzed. Sergeant Mike Duval's name appeared on the screen. Rick, you're not going to believe what I found on your boy, Craig. Duval's voice carried the excitement of a cop who'd struck gold. 3 previous marriages, all to wealthy women, all ending in messy divorces where the women lost significant assets. There's also a sealed juvenile record and 2 complaints filed with the SEC that mysteriously disappeared. Can you get me details? Already emailed them. And Rick, there's more. I ran his associates, too. Vincent Torres, his bodyguard, has priors for intimidation and assault. And get this. Tara Williams, his assistant, used to work for an escort service that catered to high-end clients. I felt pieces clicking into place. Any current investigations? Nothing official, but I made some calls. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has been sniffing around some of his investment deals. Word is they're building a case, but need more evidence. Thanks, Mike. I owe you. Just be careful, Rick. These people play for keeps. After hanging up, I turned to Chloe. How do you feel about a little surveillance work? Depends. Are we talking boring insurance fraud or the kind that might get us seriously hurt? Probably the second one. She grinned. I'm in. We spent the morning planning our approach. Chloe would handle the digital investigation. Financial records, social media, anything we could access legally. I'd take the old-fashioned route, watching, listening, and following the money. By noon, I was parked outside Craig's downtown office building in my dented Honda Civic, feeling like a dinosaur among the Teslas and BMWs. The building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where money went to multiply. At 2:30, Vince emerged from the parking garage behind the wheel of a black Escalade. I followed at a distance as he drove through the International District to a coffee shop on Jackson Street. The neighborhood was a far cry from Craig's usual haunts. Vince parked and went inside. Through the window, I watched him sit across from Brandon Chen. Julia's fiancé looked terrible, pale, nervous, like a man who'd seen his future and didn't like what he found. I couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told the story. Vince leaned forward, speaking intently. Brandon shook his head repeatedly. Vince's posture became more aggressive. Finally, Brandon nodded once, sharply, and stood to leave. As Brandon walked past my car, I rolled down the window. Brandon! Brandon Chen! He stopped, startled. Mr. Lawson, what are you doing here? Getting coffee. Want to talk? He glanced back at the coffee shop where Vince was still sitting, then at me. Fear and desperation warred in his young face. I can't, I'm sorry, but I can't. He hurried away, leaving me with more questions than answers. But I'd seen enough. Whatever Craig was planning, Brandon was being coerced into cooperation. That evening, I put my breaking and entering skills to work. Craig's office building had decent security, but I'd learned a few tricks during my police days. A maintenance uniform from a costume shop, a clipboard, and enough confidence could get you into most places. The cleaning crew let me tag along without question. While they worked on the lower floors, I took the elevator to Craig's office on the 15th floor. His corner office was a monument to ego. Awards, photos with minor celebrities, expensive art that screamed, "Look how successful I am." I planted a small listening device under his desk and photographed everything I could find. Most interesting was a folder labeled JL Trust Documentation. Inside were copies of Julia's trust fund papers, along with handwritten notes about liquidation schedules and transfer procedures. There was also a prenuptial agreement that would give Brandon access to Julia's money immediately upon marriage. But the real treasure was in Craig's computer. His password was embarrassingly simple, Winner1, and his email contained months of correspondence that painted a clear picture of his operation. Craig wasn't just after Julia's trust fund. He was running a sophisticated marriage scam, targeting wealthy young women through carefully selected male accomplices. Brandon was just the latest in a string of reluctant partners who'd been blackmailed or coerced into cooperation. I was copying files to a flash drive when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Security making rounds, probably. I finished quickly and made my way to the stairwell, my heart pounding like I was 25 again. The next morning brought consequences. I was in my office reviewing the stolen files when Chloe burst through the door. "Rick, we've got problems. Someone tried to break into our server last night. Professional job. They almost got through our firewall." "Craig's people?" "Has to be. And there's more." She handed me her phone. "Check Julia's Instagram." The photos made my blood boil. Julia at various Seattle hotspots, always with Craig hovering nearby like a protective uncle. The captions told the story. "Craig's teaching me about investments, and so grateful for my new family." But it was the comments that really got to me. Dozens of responses from Seattle's social elite, all praising Craig's generosity and making subtle digs at Julia's absent father. "He's isolating her," I said. "Classic predator behavior. Make the victim dependent on you while cutting them off from their support system." "What's our next move?" Before I could answer, my phone rang, Julia's number. "Dad?" Her voice was small, confused. "Brandon broke up with me. He threw the ring at me and said I never told him who you really were. What did he mean?" My heart broke a little. "Where are you, honey?" "At Craig's office. He's been so sweet, helping me through this. But Dad, I'm scared. Brandon said some things about you being dangerous, about you threatening him." "Julia, listen to me very carefully. I never threatened Brandon. But I think Craig might be—" The line went dead. I tried calling back, but it went straight to voicemail. When I tried the penthouse, Melissa answered. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Rick. After what you did to Brandon, can you blame her?" "What I did? Melissa, Craig is the man who's been there for Julia when her father wasn't. He's helping her through a difficult time, something you've never been good at." The line went dead again. I sat in my car outside Craig's building for 3 hours, waiting for Julia to emerge. She never did. But at 6 p.m., Craig and Vince came out together, heading for the parking garage. I followed them through downtown Seattle, staying back in the evening traffic. They led me to an upscale bar in Belltown, the kind of place where drinks cost $20 and everyone pretended to be more important than they were. I parked across the street and watched through the window as Craig held court at a corner table. Tara was there, along with 2 men I didn't recognize, and a woman who looked young enough to be someone's daughter. Through my telephoto lens, I watched Craig's performance, the charming smile, the expensive gestures, the way he leaned in close to the young woman. I'd seen it all before, in interrogation rooms and courtrooms, a predator grooming his next victim. I was so focused on the scene inside that I almost missed the figure approaching my car from behind. Almost. Vince's reflection appeared in my side mirror just as he reached for the door handle. I threw the car in drive and floored it, tires squealing as I pulled into traffic. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the street, his face twisted with rage. But I'd gotten what I came for. Photos of Craig with his next potential victim, evidence of a pattern that any prosecutor would love to see. As I drove home through the rain-slicked streets, I felt the familiar thrill of the hunt. Craig DeWitt thought he was playing chess with a broken-down ex-cop. He was about to learn that some pieces on the board were more dangerous than they looked. The real game was just beginning. The next morning brought a gift from the gods of irony, a flat tire with a neat slice in the sidewall. Someone had paid me a visit during the night, and they'd wanted to send a message without committing a felony. Amateurs, I muttered, examining the damage. If they'd wanted to really hurt me, they would have cut the brake lines. Chloe arrived as I was putting on the spare. Let me guess, Craig's people? Unless I've got other enemies I don't know about. I tightened the last lug nut and stood up, wiping my hands on a rag. Any luck with those financial records? Better than luck. I found the smoking tool. She handed me a tablet displaying a complex flowchart. Craig's been moving money through a network of shell companies. Every time he marries one of these women, large sums disappear from their accounts and end up in offshore investments that he controls. How much are we talking about? Millions. And here's the kicker. Julia's trust fund is worth $3.7 million. That's more than his last 3 scores combined. I felt sick. My daughter wasn't just another victim to Craig. She was his retirement plan. There's more, Chloe continued. I traced some of the money flows and found payments to Brandon Chen going back 6 months. $50,000 total, paid in installments. So Brandon was bought and paid for. Looks like it. But Rick, I think he might be having second thoughts. I found some interesting activity on his social media accounts, searches for lawyers, bankruptcy attorneys, even a few sites about getting help in a crisis. The kid was in over his head and drowning. Maybe there was a way to use that. I spent the afternoon conducting surveillance from a new position, a construction site across from Craig's office building. The hard hat and safety vest made me invisible to the office workers streaming past. At 3 p.m., I hit pay dirt. Craig emerged from the building with Tara, and their body language screamed affair. They walked 6 blocks to a boutique hotel, where Craig paid cash for a room. I followed them inside, staying back as they took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The desk clerk was a college kid who looked bored out of his mind. "Excuse me," I said, flashing my old police badge quickly. "I'm investigating a fraud case. The man who just checked in, Craig DeWitt. I need to know if he's been here before." The kid's eyes widened. "Are you FBI?" I didn't correct him. "This is a very serious investigation. Lives could be at stake." "Oh man, yeah, he comes in like twice a week. Always with the same blonde lady. Always pays cash. Is she like a spy or something?" "Something like that. You've been very helpful." I left the hotel with photos of Craig and Tara entering together, and the desk clerk's testimony that this was a regular occurrence. Melissa might be a cold-hearted social climber, but she was still a woman, and no woman liked being cheated on. The question was, how to use this information for maximum effect. The answer came to me as I sat in my office that evening, staring at the photos spread across my desk. Melissa's weakness wasn't money or status. It was her need to be seen as perfect by Seattle's elite. She'd built her entire identity around being the successful lawyer who'd traded up to a wealthy husband. I opened my laptop and began crafting a masterpiece. The email went to every name in Melissa's contact list: society reporters, charity board members, country club friends, professional associates. The subject line was simple: thought you should know. The message was even simpler: Melissa, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved to know what everyone's been whispering about. The attached photos were taken this afternoon at the Alexis Hotel. I hope you can work things out. A concerned friend. I attached the photos of Craig and Tara entering the hotel, along with a few shots I'd taken through their room window with my telephoto lens. Nothing pornographic, but intimate enough to tell the story. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks. They started within an hour. My phone rang. Melissa's number. "You bastard!" Her voice was pure fury. "How dare you? How could you?" "Hello to you too, Mel. I take it you got my email?" "You sent that to everyone. Everyone I know. Do you have any idea what you've done? I've given you the truth about your husband. What you do with it is up to you. This is about Julia, isn't it? You can't stand that she's found a real family. People who actually care about her." "Craig doesn't care about Julia, Melissa. He cares about her trust fund, and apparently, he also cares about his 25-year-old assistant." The line went quiet for a moment. When Melissa spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable. "How long have you known?" "I just found out. But Mel, there's more. Craig's been running marriage scams for years. Julia isn't his first victim, and if we don't stop him, she won't be his last. I don't believe you. Then ask him about his previous wives. Ask him about the SEC investigation. Ask him why Brandon Chen was paid $50,000 to seduce our daughter. Another long silence. Melissa, are you still there? I have to go. The line went dead, but I knew the seed was planted. Melissa might hate me, but she loved Julia in her own twisted way, and she definitely wouldn't tolerate being made a fool of in front of her social circle. The next phase of my plan required a face-to-face meeting with Brandon Chen. I found him at his apartment in Capitol Hill, a trendy converted warehouse that probably cost more per month than I made in 3. He answered the door looking like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he tried to close it, but I'd already put my foot in the gap. We need to talk, Brandon. I told you, I can't. Can't what? Can't tell me why Craig paid you $50,000? Can't explain why you threw an engagement ring at my daughter and broke her heart? Can't admit that you're in way over your head? His resistance crumbled. How did you find out about the money? I'm a detective, kid. It's what I do. I stepped into his apartment, noting the expensive furniture and the empty whiskey bottles on the coffee table. The question is, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing I can do. You don't understand. Craig has things on me, photos, documents. If I don't cooperate, he'll destroy my life. What kind of photos? Brandon's face flushed red. The kind that would end my career before it starts. I was young, stupid, needed money for college. I did some things I'm not proud of. Escort work? He nodded miserably. High-end clients, very discreet. Craig found out somehow, said he'd expose everything unless I helped him with Julia. So you agreed to seduce my daughter for money? It wasn't supposed to be like that. Brandon's voice cracked. I was just supposed to meet her, get close to her, maybe get her to introduce me to Craig. But then I actually fell for her. Julia's amazing, Mr. Lawson. She's smart and funny and kind, and she deserves so much better than this whole mess. Then help me stop it. How? Craig has everything on me. If I betray him, I lose everything. If you don't betray him, Julia loses everything, including $3.7 million that Craig plans to steal. Brandon stared at me. $3.7 million? He told me it was maybe $500,000 tops. Craig's been lying to you from the beginning, kid. You're not his partner. You're his tool. And when he's done using you, he'll throw you away like yesterday's newspaper. I could see the wheels turning in Brandon's head. He was young, but he wasn't stupid. What do you want me to do? I want you to be the man Julia thought she was marrying. I want you to help me save her. And if I do, what happens to the photos? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But Brandon, if you help me take down Craig, those photos will be the least of his problems. He'll be too busy fighting federal charges to worry about ruining your life. Brandon was quiet for a long moment, staring out his apartment window at the Seattle skyline. Okay, he said finally. What's the plan? As I outlined my strategy, I felt the familiar rush of a case coming together. Craig DeWitt had made his first serious mistake when he'd underestimated both Brandon's conscience and my determination. Now it was time to show him what happened when you threatened a detective's daughter. The hunter had become the hunted, and Craig was about to learn that some prey bites back. The next morning, I woke up to find my car keyed from bumper to bumper. Someone had also superglued my office door lock and left a dead fish in my mailbox. Craig's people were escalating, but they were still thinking small. I was about to show them what real escalation looked like. First stop, Tara Williams' condo in South Lake Union. According to the building directory, she lived on the 8th floor with a view of the Space Needle. According to my research, she was about to have a very bad day. I waited in the parking garage until she came down to get her car, a white BMW convertible that probably cost more than most people's houses. As she clicked her remote to unlock the doors, I stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Miss Williams, we need to talk. She spun around, her hand moving instinctively toward the pepper spray on her keychain. Up close, she was even more striking than in the photos. Tall, blonde, with the kind of curves that made smart men stupid. Who are you? Rick Lawson. I'm Julia's father. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. You know all about Craig's little marriage scam. You help him identify targets, set up the meetings, probably even coach the male accomplices on what to say. You're crazy. Am I? Then explain the $50,000 that went to Brandon Chen. Explain the hotel receipts. Explain why you used to work for Elite Companions before Craig hired you as his assistant. Tara's composure cracked. You don't understand. Craig isn't just my boss. He owns me. If I don't do what he says, he'll destroy everything I've worked for. What's he got on you? Photos, videos, client lists from my escort days? Enough to ruin me 10 times over. I felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but I pushed it down. This woman had helped target my daughter. Here's what's going to happen, Tara. You're going to help me bring down Craig, or I'm going to make sure those photos are the least of your problems. I can't. You don't know what he's capable of. Actually, I do. But you don't know what I'm capable of. I stepped closer, letting her see the cold anger in my eyes. I'm a cop, Tara. I know how to make people disappear. I know how to plant evidence. I know how to make your life a living heck in ways Craig never dreamed of. It was a bluff, mostly, but Tara didn't know that. What do you want? I want you to record Craig. Get him talking about the scam, about Julia, about his plans for her trust fund. Do that, and I'll make sure you get immunity when this all comes crashing down. And if I don't, then you go down with him. Your choice. I left her standing in the parking garage, shaking like a leaf. Part 1 of my revenge plan was complete. Part 2 required a trip to the auto parts store. Craig's Porsche emergency was his pride and joy, a bright red symbol of his success that he parked in the same spot every day outside his office building. The car was worth more than I'd made in the last 2 years, and Craig treated it like a beloved pet, which made what I was about to do even more satisfying. I waited until after midnight, then made my way to the parking garage with a bag full of supplies. The security cameras had convenient blind spots, and the overnight guard was more interested in his smartphone than his monitors. I started with the sugar in the gas tank, a classic that would destroy the engine within a few miles of driving. Then I moved on to the exterior, using a can of black spray paint to write "Thief" across the hood, in letters 3 feet tall. But the piece de resistance was the bumper stickers, dozens of them covering every inch of the car's surface. I brake for prostitutes. Honk if you've been scammed. My other car is stolen too. I finished by supergluing the door handles and filling the air vents with shaving cream. By the time I was done, Craig's precious Porsche looked like a rejected parade float. I set up across the street the next morning with a telephoto lens, waiting for Craig to discover my handiwork. He didn't disappoint. The scream of rage that echoed through the parking garage was audible from 3 blocks away. Craig stood next to his ruined car, his face purple with fury, his hands shaking as he tried unsuccessfully to remove the bumper stickers. I got it all on video. Craig's meltdown, his frantic phone calls, his pathetic attempts to scrape "thief" off his hood with a credit card. Within an hour, the video was uploaded to YouTube, Reddit, and every social media platform I could find. The title? Seattle Investment Advisor Has Bad Day. By noon, it had 10,000 views and was trending on local Twitter feeds. But Craig's day was about to get worse. Phase 3 of my revenge plan targeted the thing Craig valued even more than his car, his reputation. I'd spent years learning how to destroy people's credibility in court, and those skills translated perfectly to social media warfare. I created a dozen fake accounts and began flooding Craig's business pages with reviews from former clients. Each review told a slightly different story, but they all painted the same picture. Craig DeWitt was a con artist who specialized in seducing wealthy women and stealing their money. Craig promised me a 20% return on my investment. Instead, he returned 20% of my money and kept the rest. Avoid at all costs. This man seduced my daughter and convinced her to give him access to her trust fund. She lost everything. He's a predator. Craig DeWitt is a smooth talker who will promise you the world and deliver nothing but heartbreak and empty bank accounts. Within hours, Craig's business rating had plummeted from 5 stars to 1.5. His phone was probably ringing off the hook with angry clients and potential investors demanding explanations. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I received a call from Tara. Her voice was shaky, but determined. "I got the recording," she said. Craig was bragging to Vince about how easy it was going to be to access Julia's trust fund once the prenup was signed. He said Brandon was getting cold feet, but it didn't matter because he had enough dirt on the kid to keep him in line. Did he mention the other women? Oh, yeah. He called them his retirement fund. Said each marriage was worth more than the last, and Julia was going to be his biggest score yet. Perfect. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's something else. Craig knows you're behind the car thing and the online reviews. He's planning something big, something that will discredit you completely. What kind of something? I don't know the details, but he mentioned planting evidence, maybe making it look like you've been stalking Julia. He wants to get a restraining order against you. I felt a chill run down my spine. If Craig could convince a judge that I was dangerous, he could cut me off from Julia completely, and without my interference, he'd be free to drain her trust fund at his leisure. Tara, I need you to stay close to Craig. Find out exactly what he's planning. I'll try, but Rick, be careful. Craig's getting desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at the photos and documents scattered across my desk. I'd hurt Craig's pride and damaged his reputation, but I hadn't stopped him. If anything, I'd made him more dangerous. It was time to take the gloves off. I picked up my phone and dialed Brandon's number. It's Rick. Are you ready to do this? I think so. What do you need? I need you to propose to Julia again, publicly, dramatically, in front of as many people as possible. What? But I thought we were trying to protect her from... We are. But first, we need to draw Craig out into the open. He thinks he's won, that he's got you under control and me out of the picture. Let's show him how wrong he is. And if something goes wrong? If I can't protect Julia? Then you better hope I get there in time to save both of you. As I hung up the phone, I felt the familiar weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. I'd started this war to protect my daughter, but now I was putting her directly in harm's way. It was a calculated risk, the kind that either won cases or destroyed careers. In the morning, I'd find out which one this was going to be. The end game was about to begin, and only one of us was walking away with Julia safe and sound. The next morning brought news that made my blood run cold. Julia was in the hospital. I raced through Seattle traffic, my heart pounding as I replayed Melissa's frantic phone call. Accident. Sleeping pills. Craig found her this morning. The words jumbled together in my mind as I screeched into the hospital parking lot. I found Melissa in the ICU waiting room, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. For the first time in years, she looked her age. How is she? I demanded. Stable. They pumped her stomach, but... Melissa's voice broke. Rick, she tried to end herself. Our baby tried to end herself, and I didn't even see it coming. Where's Craig? Talking to the doctors. He's been amazing through all this, so supportive. Melissa, open your eyes. Craig is the reason Julia's in that bed. Don't you dare. Don't you dare try to blame this on Craig when you're the one who's been harassing our family, stalking us, trying to destroy everything good in Julia's life. Before I could respond, Craig appeared in the doorway with a doctor in tow. His face was a mask of concern, but I caught the flash of satisfaction in his eyes when he saw me. Dr. Patterson, this is Julia's biological father, Craig said smoothly. He's been having some difficulties accepting Julia's new family situation. Dr. Patterson looked uncomfortable. Mr. Lawson? I'm afraid visiting hours are restricted to immediate family only. I am immediate family. I'm her father. Actually, Craig interjected, there's been some concern about Mr. Lawson's behavior lately. We've been considering a restraining order. The trap was springing shut around me, and there wasn't a single thing I could do about it. If I made a scene, it would only confirm Craig's narrative that I was unstable. If I left quietly, I'd be abandoning Julia when she needed me most. 5 minutes, I said to the doctor. Just give me 5 minutes with my daughter. Dr. Patterson looked between Craig and me, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. I suppose, but only briefly, and someone should accompany you. I'll go with him, Melissa said quietly. Craig's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Of course, I'll wait here. Julia looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her face pale against the white pillows. Machines beeped softly around her, monitoring vital signs that had come too close to flatline for comfort. Hey, sweetheart, I whispered, taking her hand. Dad's here. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused from the medication. Dad, is that really you? It's me, baby. I'm here. I'm so sorry, Dad. I messed everything up. Brandon, the engagement, everything Craig worked so hard to arrange. Julia, listen to me. None of this is your fault. Craig isn't who you think he is. Don't say that. Craig's been the only one who believed in me, who didn't judge me for my mistakes. What mistakes? Julia, you haven't made any mistakes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I found out about the money, Dad, the trust fund. Brandon told me the truth before he broke up with me. He said I was just a bank account to him, that everything between us was fake. My heart broke for her, but I also felt a spark of hope. If Brandon had told her the truth about the money, maybe there was still time to save her from Craig's web. Sweetheart, there's more you need to know. About Craig. About why Brandon really broke up with you. Time's up. Craig appeared in the doorway, his voice carrying an edge of authority that made the nurses step aside. Julia needs her rest. Dad, please don't go, Julia whispered, her grip tightening on my hand. I'm not going anywhere, baby, I promise. But even as I said the words, I knew they might not be true. Craig was maneuvering to cut me out of Julia's life completely, and I was running out of options to stop him. That evening, I met with Brandon at a 24-hour diner in Fremont. He looked as bad as I felt, exhausted, guilty, scared. I told her about the money, he said without preamble. I couldn't go through with the proposal knowing what Craig was planning. How much did you tell her? Everything. About Craig paying me, about the prenup, about the trust fund. I thought if she knew the truth, she'd be able to protect herself. Instead, she tried to end herself. Brandon flinched. I know. God, I know. I never meant for this to happen. Craig's using this to paint me as the villain. He's telling everyone that my harassment drove Julia to a self-harm attempt. What do we do now? Now we finish this. Tonight. I outlined my plan as Brandon listened with growing alarm. That's insane, he said when I finished. If something goes wrong, Julia could get hurt. Julia's already hurt. And if we don't stop Craig now, she'll lose everything. Her money, her trust, maybe her life. You really think he'd end her? I think Craig DeWitt is a sociopath who sees people as objects to be used. Once he has control of Julia's trust fund, she becomes a liability. And Craig doesn't keep liabilities around? Brandon was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee cup. Okay, he said finally. I'm in. But if this goes sideways, it won't. Trust me. Famous last words, but they were all I had. The plan required precision timing and a lot of luck. While Brandon played his part, I would be breaking into Craig's penthouse to plant evidence and gather the final pieces of proof I needed to destroy him. At midnight, Brandon called Craig from the hospital parking lot. I need to see you, he said, his voice carefully modulated to sound desperate. About Julia, about the money. I think I made a mistake. I listened to Brandon's side of the conversation through a hidden microphone, holding my breath as Craig took the bait. Yes, I know it's late, but this can't wait. Julia's awake and she's asking questions. We need to get our stories straight before... Craig's voice cut him off, sharp and suspicious. Meet me at the penthouse in an hour, Brandon continued. And Craig, bring the original trust fund documents. If we're going to do this, we need to do it right. After Brandon hung up, I had exactly 60 minutes to get into Craig's penthouse, find what I needed, and get out before he returned with Brandon. The building's security was better than his office, but I'd been planning this break-in for days. A stolen maintenance key, a fake work order, and a lot of confidence got me past the front desk and into the elevator. Craig's penthouse was a monument to stolen wealth. Art that probably belonged in museums, furniture that cost more than most people's cars, and a safe hidden behind a painting that screamed cliché. The safe was a high-end digital model, but I'd come prepared. A small device that Chloe had acquired through questionable channels made quick work of the electronic lock. Inside, I found the motherlode, contracts for all of Craig's previous marriage scams, bank records showing the movement of stolen funds, and most damning of all, a detailed plan for accessing and liquidating Julia's trust fund. But the real treasure was a leather journal filled with Craig's handwritten notes, page after page of calculations, psychological profiles of his victims, and cold clinical observations about the best ways to manipulate wealthy women. One entry made my blood boil. Julia Lawson, 22, trust fund $3.7 million. Daddy issues make her perfect target. Father is ex-cop, potentially dangerous but discredited. Plan: use Brandon to secure engagement, eliminate father through legal means, access funds immediately after marriage. If Julia becomes problematic post-marriage, consider permanent solutions. Permanent solutions. The bastard was actually planning to end my daughter once he had her money. I photographed everything, uploaded copies to a secure server, and was preparing to leave when I heard voices in the hallway. Craig and Brandon, arriving 20 minutes early. I had maybe 30 seconds before they walked through the front door. The safe was already closed, but I was trapped in Craig's study with no way out except through the living room where they'd be standing. The voices grew closer. I heard Craig's key in the lock. There was only one option. The balcony, 15 floors above the Seattle streets with nothing but a narrow ledge connecting Craig's balcony to his neighbor's. I slipped through the sliding door just as the front door opened, pressing myself against the building's facade as wind whipped around me. Below, the city lights blurred together like fallen stars. "Told you this was urgent," Brandon was saying, his voice carrying through the glass. "Urgent enough to drag me out of bed," Craig replied. "This better be worth my time." I couldn't hear the rest of the conversation, but I didn't need to. Brandon would keep Craig occupied for at least 10 minutes, giving me time to make my escape. The ledge was maybe 6 inches wide, slick with Seattle's perpetual drizzle. I inched along it carefully, trying not to look down at the street far below. One slip, one moment of lost concentration, and Julia would be an orphan. But I made it to the neighboring balcony and from there to the stairwell. By the time Craig realized someone had been in his penthouse, I was already in my car, driving through the empty streets with enough evidence to put him away for the rest of his life. The trap had been set, and Craig DeWitt was about to walk right into it. All I had to do now was spring it without getting Julia ended in the process. The next morning, I walked into the FBI's Seattle field office with a briefcase full of evidence and a simple proposition. Help me save my daughter, and I'll give you the biggest financial fraud case you've seen all year. Special Agent Sarah Chen, no relation to Brandon, listened to my story with the kind of professional skepticism I'd once employed myself. But when I spread Craig's journal entries across her desk, her expression changed. "Mr. Lawson, if this is authentic, we're looking at multiple federal crimes. Wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy. It's authentic. And there's more where that came from. What do you want from us?" "I want you to arrest Craig DeWitt before he can hurt my daughter, and I want to be there when you do it." Agent Chen studied me carefully. "This is personal for you." "You're absolutely right, it is, but that doesn't make it wrong." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't. Give me 4 hours to verify this evidence and coordinate with the U.S. Attorney's Office. If everything checks out, we'll move tonight." Tonight might be too late. Craig's getting desperate, and desperate men make fatal mistakes. "Then we better hope your evidence is solid." As if summoned by my words, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your daughter is asking for you. Pier 70, Warehouse 12. Come alone or she dies. You have 1 hour." I showed the message to Agent Chen. "Change of plans." "Mr. Lawson, you cannot go to that meeting. It's obviously a trap." "Of course it's a trap. But Julia's my daughter, and I'm not leaving her with that psychopath for another minute. We'll coordinate a tactical response." "There's no time for tactical responses. Craig's not going to wait around for you to get your SWAT team in position." I was already moving toward the door when Agent Chen called after me. "If you do this alone, you'll probably die. Then make sure you arrest the right man for what happens next." Pier 70 sat on the edge of Elliott Bay like a concrete graveyard, its abandoned warehouses serving as monuments to Seattle's industrial past. I'd been here before, chasing pill dealers and violent criminals through the maze of rusted machinery and broken dreams. Warehouse 12 squatted at the end of the pier, its windows dark except for a single light glowing in what had once been an office. I parked 50 yards away and checked my service tool, a .38 Colt I'd carried for 20 years and hoped I wouldn't need today. The warehouse door stood slightly ajar, an invitation written in shadow and rust. I pushed it open and stepped into a cavern of echoing darkness. "Dad!" Julia's voice came from the office above, strained but alive. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by cold rage. "I'm here, baby," I called back. "Everything's going to be okay." "How touching." Craig's voice drifted down from the office, amplified by the warehouse's acoustics. "The hero father comes to save his precious daughter." I climbed the metal stairs slowly, my tool drawn but pointed down. The office was small and cramped, with windows that looked out over the bay. Craig stood behind a desk, one hand resting on Julia's shoulder as she sat in a chair, her wrists zip-tied behind her back. "Let her go, Craig. This is between you and me." "Actually, it's between me and $3.7 million. You're just an obstacle that needs to be removed." I could see the madness in his eyes now, the cold calculation that had been hidden behind his charming facade. This was Craig DeWitt without the mask, a predator cornered and ready to end. "The FBI knows everything," I said. "Your journal, your bank records, your whole operation. Even if you end me, you'll never see a penny of Julia's money." Craig's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "The FBI? You think I'm worried about the FBI? I've been laundering money through offshore accounts for 10 years. By tomorrow, I'll be on a beach in the Cayman Islands, and your daughter will be fish food at the bottom of Elliott Bay. You're insane. I'm practical. Julia's become a liability. Too many questions, too much attention. But her death will look like an apparent act of self-harm, just like her overdose should have been if the doctors hadn't been so efficient. You gave her those pills. I gave her a choice. Take the pills and drift away peacefully or fight me and die hard. She chose poorly. Julia looked up at me with eyes full of terror and apology. Dad, I'm sorry. I should have listened to you about Craig. About everything. It's okay, baby. We're going to get through this. Actually, you're not. Craig pulled a tool from his jacket, a chrome-plated automatic that gleamed in the office's dim light. Here's how this is going to work, Detective. You're going to put your tool on the floor and kick it away. Then you're going to watch while I end your daughter. And then I'm going to end you. Why? You've got the money. Just take it and run. Because you humiliated me. Craig's composure finally cracked, revealing the narcissistic rage beneath. You destroyed my car, ruined my reputation, turned my own wife against me. Nobody does that to Craig DeWitt and lives to tell about it. I saw the opening, his anger blinding him just long enough. I dove left as Craig raised the tool, rolling behind a filing cabinet. A deafening shot rang out, and the window behind me exploded in a spray of glass. Dad! Julia screamed. Stay down, baby! Craig fired twice more, the bullets sparking off metal and concrete. I could hear him moving, trying to get an angle on my position. You can't hide forever, Detective, and every second you waste, your daughter gets closer to dying. He was right. The office was small with limited cover and no exit except the stairs I'd come up. Craig had the high ground and the heavier firepower. In a straight fight, I was done for. But I wasn't planning on a straight fight. Craig, I called out, you want to know why your marriage scam really worked? What? It worked because you're a coward who preys on women who can't fight back. But you made one mistake. You tried to hurt a cop's daughter. I heard him moving again, his footsteps creaking on the old floorboards. He was trying to flank me, get behind my position. You think being a cop makes you special? Craig shouted. You're nothing! A washed-up loser who couldn't even keep his own marriage together. Maybe, but I'm a washed-up loser with 20 years of tactical training and nothing left to lose. I rolled out from behind the filing cabinet, not toward Craig, but toward Julia. His tool tracked me, but he hesitated for a crucial second, afraid of hitting his $3 million payday. That second was all I needed. I tackled Julia's chair, sending both of us crashing to the floor as Craig's shot went wide. My knife was out and cutting her zip ties before we'd finished falling. The stairs! I shouted, pushing Julia toward the exit. Run! Craig's next shot splintered the doorframe inches from Julia's head, but she was already through and clattering down the metal steps. I fired twice at Craig's position, driving him back behind the desk, then followed Julia down. The car! I yelled. Get to the car! But as we burst through the warehouse door, I saw Vince waiting by my Honda, a long-barreled tool cradled in his arms like a favorite pet. Going somewhere? He asked. We were trapped. Craig behind us, Vince in front, and nothing but dark water to either side. I pushed Julia behind me and raised my tool, knowing it was hopeless, but determined to make them pay for every inch. Dad, Julia whispered, I love you. I love you too, baby. That's when the FBI tactical team came through the warehouse like an avenging army, their voices echoing off the concrete walls. Federal agents! Drop your tools! Drop your tools now! Vince spun toward the new threat, his long-barreled tool swinging with lethal intent. I fired twice into his chest before he could act, and he went down like a sack of cement. Behind us, I heard Craig screaming curses as the agents swarmed the office. More agents poured through the warehouse doors, their tactical lights cutting through the darkness like laser swords. Detective Lawson? Agent Chen's voice carried over the chaos. Are you and Julia secure? We're secure, I called back, my arm around my daughter's shoulders. Craig DeWitt is upstairs, armed and dangerous. We've got him. And they did. Within minutes, Craig was being led out in handcuffs, his expensive suit torn and his face bruised from where he'd fought the agents. He looked smaller somehow, diminished without his wealth and power to hide behind. As they loaded him into a federal transport vehicle, he caught sight of me and Julia standing by the ambulance. This isn't over, Lawson, he screamed. You think you've won, but you've just delayed the inevitable. There are others like me, and they'll find your daughter eventually. Maybe, I called back. But they'll have to go through me first. And Craig, Next time someone threatens my family, I won't wait for the FBI to show up. Agent Chen appeared at my elbow as Craig's transport disappeared into the Seattle night. Nice work, detective, though I have to ask, how did you know we'd be here? I didn't. I just hoped you'd be smart enough to follow me. And if we hadn't? I looked at Julia, who was being checked over by paramedics but seemed physically unharmed. The emotional scars would take longer to heal, but she was alive and safe. Then Craig DeWitt would have learned what happens when you corner a father with nothing left to lose. Agent Chen studied me for a moment. You know, we could use someone with your skills at the Bureau, someone who understands how predators think. Thanks, but no. I've got a daughter to take care of and a business to run. The private sector suits me just fine. Fair enough, but if you ever change your mind... She handed me her card and walked away, leaving Julia and me alone on the pier as Seattle's skyline glittered across the water. Dad, Julia's voice was small, uncertain. What happens now? Now we go home. We heal. We figure out how to be a family again. What about Mom? And the trust fund? And Brandon? Your mother will be fine. She's tougher than she looks. The trust fund is yours, and you'll learn how to manage it responsibly. As for Brandon, I looked at my daughter, seeing strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. That's your decision to make, but whatever you decide, I'll support you. I think I want to forgive him. What Craig did to him, the blackmail and threats. Brandon's a victim too. Then we'll help him heal, just like we're going to help you heal. Julia hugged me then, fierce and desperate, like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. I'm sorry I didn't trust you, she whispered. I'm sorry I let Craig turn me against you. You have nothing to apologize for, sweetheart. Craig DeWitt was a professional manipulator. He fooled a lot of people smarter than both of us. But not you. You saw through him from the beginning. That's what fathers do. We protect our children even when they don't want to be protected. As we walked toward my battered Honda, Julia slipped her hand into mine like she used to when she was little. Dad? Will you teach me how to be a detective? I want to learn how to see through people like Craig. I smiled, feeling something that had been broken inside me finally start to heal. I'd be honored to, baby. But first, let's get you home. The case was closed, the bad guys were in custody, and my daughter was safe. In 20 years of police work, I'd never had a better ending than that. Craig DeWitt had made the mistake of thinking he could destroy a father's love for his child. He'd learned too late that some bonds can't be broken, no matter how much money or power you think you have. Justice had been served, and the Lawson family was whole again.